Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert, the leading growth and development podcast for the estimated 56% of us who recharge by going inwards. Our purpose is to help you manage your social battery and own your energy so you can reach your true potential in your business, your career, or your life. I'm your host, Emma-Louise, a former air traffic controller, entrepreneur, and a success coach with over 15 years experience. I've supported hundreds of introverts like you who dream big and are ready to take action towards making those dreams a reality without compromising their energy in the process. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing tips, tricks, and hacks on how to build your resilience, master your mindset, and cultivate self-leadership. Skills that will help you reach your goals without trying to be someone that you're not. We'll also be sharing valuable lessons and insights from our own personal experiences, all focused on one thing: helping you own your energy to reach your potential. Hello, ambitious introverts. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Emma-Louise, and today's guest is Ewelina Olechowska. Ewelina and I connected in a networking group, and we just found that we had so much in common. And the thing that we're going to dive into today is so important because for Ewelina, there's this period of her life that was before personal development and then this period of life after. And they're kind of like chalk and cheese. This really comes down to, are we able to take ownership of our thoughts? Are we able to question things that we've always been told we should do or that are normal? All of these things can feel really scary. And so please listen in and enjoy this chat with Ewelina, where she's sharing some big, scary decisions that she's made over the last 4 or 5 years that ultimately may not logically make sense, that other people may not necessarily have agreed with. But you'll be hearing about why she decided to do them, how she leaned into trust in her intuition, and what the outcome of that have been for her. Ewelina is a brand designer and she's the founder of Studio Domka, and you can find all of her details in the show notes. But for now, please enjoy this episode, and I hope it leaves you feeling inspired and ready to take action on some big moves yourself. Ewelina, hello. Thank you for joining me on the Ambitious Introvert Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Emma.
Oh, and this is number 3 attempt at recording because we've been having some technical glitches over here, but it's all good. But I think that just serves as a reminder that when you hear the final polished product, it's not always so easy behind the scenes.
Yes.
But we're adamant that this is take 3 and this is the one. So thank you for bearing with me.
Yeah, of course. Third time is always the charm. It has to be.
It has to be.
Yes.
So we connected in a networking membership that we are both part of. And we have been connected for a few months now, chatting on Voxer and just, seeing if you were a good fit for the podcast, which I think we both decided quite early you were because we had a great vibe and really enjoyed chatting to each other. So I'm really excited to dive a little bit more into your story. The first thing that, and we will cover this in more depth, but the first thing I just want to make everyone aware of at home is that this was going to sound so easy. They'll be listening and they'll be going, Ewelina's great. She's so inspirational. Oh, she did this big thing. She's done this. She's done that. You said to me 5 minutes before we hit record, I'm really pushing myself outside my comfort zone here to start sharing more of my story, right?
Yes, 1000%. With something like this podcast recording today, and also with having started my business and venturing all the different ups and downs and rabbit holes. Yeah, it's definitely a season of being uncomfortable, but knowing that it's going to only better my growth and journey. So I'm committed to it, even though it's not easy. But I've seen all the beauty and all the benefits from it. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I hope it's not too uncomfortable today outside of your comfort zone, but I know that
cozy.
You have so much gold and so many little nuggets to share that people listening that are on their personal development journey or that are on the cusp of, they really dreaming big and they wanted to take that action and it feels scary to them. I know that they're going to really be given permission or see that, as a human, these things don't always feel super easy, but that doesn't mean that we can't do them.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
So the one thing that I really love about your story is, we all have this, but you just articulated it so well, that there's kind of your life before personal development, and then there's your life after personal development, and that there's a very obvious division, and you can really see looking back, how you were different, how everything felt different. Talk us through, what did life look like for you pre-personal development and working on your growth?
Yes. So to set the scene and give a little bit of context, I would say we can go back 6 years or so, pre-personal development, when I really discovered this deep rabbit hole that's been ever evolving. But I was working in a 9-to-5 at my architecture job. I had graduated college a few years prior, and I found this architecture position that seemed so perfect on paper. It had everything that I had been looking for. Prior to that, I was in a construction job that was very unfulfilling. I studied architecture in school. I knew, okay, I definitely want to do architecture. So when I got to the studio, I'm like, okay, this is great. But then 6 months in, I reached this deep state of unfulfillment and monotony that was really eating away at me. But I didn't know in the moment, especially now after all this time has passed, looking back, like how deeply unfulfilled I was. Because I think there's this narrative that's touted of, working, going to college, finishing with your degree, finding that job and just staying put, or at least from my very traditional Polish upbringing, that was always what was kind of expected for me. So when I got to this job, I kept thinking, well, I should be happy. I should be fulfilled in doing this. And I had worked really hard in college to get there. But all the while, I was very unfulfilled. And in tandem with that, in my personal life, I was in a long-term relationship with someone who I loved dearly, an incredible person, but there was also unfulfillment from that. But similar to the career narrative of like, oh, you should be doing this, I was also in this relationship thinking, I should be getting married. Like, this is my person. I should be settling down. And I would say the doors just like cracked wide open for me after I had navigated the very hard and scary decision of ending that relationship. Ultimately, it just came to a moment where we were both very unfulfilled and unhappy. But that to date has been the hardest decision I have ever made, because not only was it the first time that, now in hindsight, especially looking back, I was choosing myself, but I also knew in tandem I was disappointing so many people, my family, my friends. It was a very dark, challenging time for me. But what came from that is this incessant curiosity and almost this push, because for the first time in what felt like my life, I was alone. I didn't have anyone to depend on. I didn't have a crutch. So there was no other choice and option for me but to figure it out on my own. And I had been listening to several podcasts at that point. I'm an incessant learner. I'm always hungry for growth and wisdom and knowledge. But I had heard on a podcast multiple times this manifestation workshop that was being promoted. And when I had heard even the founder being interviewed, it just went right over my head. I'm like, I have no idea what this is. But something after that breakup, because I think I was in a very vulnerable, open state, I had re-listened to the podcast and the manifestation workshop was being talked about. And it was in that moment, there was this knowing of like, I have to just check this out. I don't know what this is. But I had joined the manifestation workshop. It was digital, but this was pre-COVID at the time. So there were in-person events happening outside of digital Zoom meetings and all that. And every month there was a monthly meetup in different bigger cities. So I was living in Boston at the time, and I had went to the in-person meetup. And for the first time in my life, I had connected with other women who were on this journey of figuring out who they are and reading all the self-development books. And we could get woo-woo. And, there was some astrology and all that involved. Human design. That was the first time I discovered human design as well. But there was this just openness that I had never experienced in my life before. And for the first time, we talk about the word awareness. Like, what does that mean to really know and understand yourself? That is when that awareness for me kind of came online. And I started questioning, why am I doing certain things? What does it actually mean to be fulfilled and happy? And shortly after I had left my job, I had gotten into a more fulfilling job. All these changes started to happen, but it was really the impetus for that started with me, truthfully, just being on my own. And while that was so terrifying, I think in hindsight, it was absolutely the push I needed to navigate this personal development journey that's been evolving ever since. And I think it's a lifelong journey, truly. I don't think it ever ends, because the deeper you go, the deeper you want to keep going. So
it's so often the case that it's something big and something, terrifying and upsetting and life-changing that does put us on the path to asking those questions and, like you say, cultivating that self-awareness, because rather than just following the status quo and doing, oh, this is what I do and this is what I do and this is next and I should be happy, you're suddenly going, well, what does make me happy? What do I want to do next? Which are actually very empowering questions. So for anyone listening that's like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. Can you give us an idea, like what was involved in that manifestation workshop? Because I love that how you say it just went over your head because the timing wasn't right. And then when it was right, you were like, okay, I'm going to have a look at this. But this was your first kind of glimpse into that kind of world. Was it like, what did it look like? Was it very woo? What was going on? How did you feel the first time you took it?
Yeah. So I will say this manifestation workshop, and it's actually, if anyone listening is familiar or is curious to dive deeper, it's called To Be Magnetic. And it's by this incredible woman, Lacey Phillips.
Every listener that's been here a while knows To Be Magnetic because I talk about it a lot. I recommend it. I'm an affiliate.
Perfect.
Most of my clients do it.
That's amazing.
So we're good. We're good with TBM.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're on the same page then. So TBM was the workshop, and as you know, I mean, it is rooted in just personal psychology and development, and the workshops that Lacey creates with in the inner child, the shadows. Those concepts to me, like I had never heard of them. I'm like, what does it mean to look back at your childhood? What does it mean to look at the shadow sides of you and all of that? So that was the invitation. And again, because it was so novel to me, there was a curiosity, but as soon as I started diving in and I started just connecting all the dots together, it like my eyes were just like blown open. I'm like, okay, whoa. And it's this, again, curiosity is the word, but it's this need to come back to myself deeper. And I think growing up in a very traditional European household, my background is Polish, there was always this idea that, your parents know best. Let's make all the decisions for you. And so I feel like up until that point, I had never had the opportunity to fully take autonomy when it came to some of the smaller decisions in my life and the bigger ones, of course, too. So the TBM work completely opened my eyes to that of like, oh, okay, I'm an autonomous human being here and I can make these decisions for myself. So that was a very deep, but the most life-changing introduction for me with the personal development. It was the TBM workshop. Yeah.
I'm very thrilled it's TBM. Obviously, I'm going to put the link in the show notes for anyone that wants to check it out. But I think where you say you're a lifelong learner, I am the same. And a lot of introverts are the same. We do like to go deep on things and really go inwards and understand the concept. I think TBM does that very well because it's not just like, here, follow this and you will have an amazing life. It's a process, and it's also explaining, the neuroplasticity behind it and the science behind it. And I think when I know certainly for a lot of my clients, that was the thing that enabled them to create a personal development practice and a manifestation practice was I now understand the science behind it. Therefore, I feel confident in doing it and that I'm not just wasting my time.
Yes. Sometimes you need the tangible explanation and the knowing to almost give you that. I mean, I think you said it, the confidence to know that, okay, there's actually something here behind this. So that helped. Absolutely. And then I will say just witnessing the change and the growth, like actually in my relationships, with my friendships, with my family, and observing how patterns and behaviors that I had been playing out all my life were, and it's hard to describe and explain, but they were just gently disappearing and adjusting for something, for example, like social anxiety. I think this is something that I dealt with all my life. And it's interesting because I feel like I had never garnered the awareness to know that I was a socially anxious person until I dove in and actually was doing the TBM workshops, but had the verbiage. I think putting words to something you're navigating also helps too, because it it actually makes it real. It's like it gives you the substance to recognize, oh, this is something that I'm actually dealing with. And so when I first discovered, oh, social anxiety is an idea, it was this, I don't know, it was the most validating moment, I think, for me, where I'm like, oh, this is actually something that I've been navigating, but I didn't know that I was navigating. And since I became aware of it, I was able to observe myself interacting with different people and noticing, oh, why am I nervous when I'm talking to this person? Why am I saying something that actually I don't want to say, but I'm saying it because I want to belong or make this connection? So, we could go on and on that, but that's just a little example of one big pattern for me that completely shifted after having done the work, just getting a handle on some of those, we could call it unconscious patterns and behaviors.
It's so powerful. And like giving things, like you say, speaking it out, that it has a name and understanding that it's a thing and it's separate from you and outside of you. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like labels and we shouldn't call ourselves this. And, there is something to be said for that, especially if the labels are disempowering us. But another one that I see this play out in a similar way to how you've just explained is self-sabotage. Because when people understand the concept of self-sabotage, they can go, oh, I'm creating some self-sabotage here. I'm in a pattern of self-sabotage, rather than going, I'm a failure. I can't do it. Yes. I've done everything right. And it kind of takes it away from the person. And it's like, oh, this is just a defense mechanism that I'm playing out. And if I can step away and look at that as an observer and start to question, am I doing this? Why am I doing this? What can I do instead? That's how you're much more likely to overcome something like social anxiety, self-sabotage, by looking at it in that, neutral observer's lens.
Yes, absolutely. And I think to what you shared, the idea of labels, I think it, like a lot of things, it goes both ways. I think it was important for me to first recognize that, oh, I am a socially anxious person. But after working through that, it's like, okay, this doesn't have power over me anymore. Because I think this is where the victim mindset can come in for a lot of people, where they attach themselves to the labels, and it's very disempowering, like you shared. Noticing it, recognizing it, taking personal responsibility, and then doing what you can to shift the behavior if it doesn't align, and letting go of that label for good. I think ultimately, to also what you shared, it's just reaching that place of neutrality. I think that's the ultimate goal.
It's such an interesting concept with labels as introverts. And, the reason that my brand exists is to empower introverts and help ambitious introverts reach their potential. But we have to take that label back to what it really means. It's not about being scared. It's not about being shy. It's not about being socially awkward. It's not about, being a recluse. It's about managing your energy. We charge our energy in the complete opposite way to extroverts. And if we distill it back down to that, having that label is really empowering, because it's like, I'm an introvert. I need to manage my energy. So let me prioritize my energy. And that means that I can be my best and achieve my best and all of those things. Whereas, yes, the victim mindset can come in if it's like, oh, I'm an introvert, so I'm not good at this, so I can't do it. It's like that. It's not traits. It's energy management,
yes,
all the time.
1000%.
So with that self-awareness, with this newfound, like you say, you're like, oh, I can decide what I want, and what actually allowing yourself to see, like, oh, I don't have to do it the standard way. I can have life how I want it. What came through for you? What were the big shifts what did you see in your future that you're like, okay, I don't want to sit at this desk job anymore. I want to do that instead.
Yeah. Such an interesting question. Freedom is my top value. And this was something that I recognized, again, diving into, if we want to cite TBM work, diving into the authentic code exercise of like, okay, what are your top values? What's most important for you? Freedom has always been it for me. And so it was an opportunity to dream into what that freedom looks like. I think one of the biggest things that came to being, especially after I left my desk job, I started working at a startup agency in Boston after soul searching for 8+ months of what I wanted to do, because it was a point where architecture was no longer fulfilling for me. And so I was questioning, do I want to do this career anymore? And that was also a big, scary pivot for me, because again, going back to this idea of the social norms, you go to school for something for 4 or 5 years, you're expected to do that. And I think my family, again, being very traditional, when I shared with them, I don't want to do architecture anymore, you can imagine my Polish mother's concern of like, you wasted all
in it.
Yes, she's like, you wasted all this time in school. Mind you, I pivoted to graphic design, which is very similar in the same realm. It's not like I was going into the medical field or anything, but even still, I think that's okay. I think there's a lot. We could also go down a rabbit hole of how flawed the education system is in a lot of regards, and very limiting and constricting. But it was the first time that I was able to really allow myself to dream into what my life could look like if it wasn't architecture. And I manifested this beautiful opportunity working it was for an agency in Boston, but it was also terrifying because it was a startup. It was founded by two sisters. We were working in their living room. There was no benefits, no health insurance. I had to take a $15,000 pay cut. I mean, everything. There's so many red flags logically, but intuitively. And this is the division. This is something I personally have also been trying to lean into in my life more. It's like distilling what feels right logically versus what feels right intuitively. Because I think people, of course, we can make the lists of pros and cons, but then there's something very subjective that you can't ever really articulate, which is the internal knowing on your heart of like, even though this sounds crazy, I absolutely have to do this. So there was a moment for me when I was sitting with the decision of whether or not I wanted to take this agency opportunity up of, oh my gosh, is this right? Because it feels so scary. And again, my family was like, you're crazy. You're leaving your safe 9 to 5. But I trusted my gut and I did it. And what started from there was a 2-year journey of watching my two bosses, these sisters, build an agency from scratch. And I learned so much from that opportunity. I mean, I had my hands in every bucket of doing graphic design, but social media management and working with clients. Right today, as we're connecting, I have my own business. I've had it for 3 years, and I can confidently say I wouldn't be able to have started it if it wasn't for that opportunity, because that was the first moment where I was able to witness, something so scrappy being built from the ground up. And then I was able to garner those takeaways into my own personal business. So to go back to your original question of, what was kind of unfolding for me, it was this deeper sense of curiosity, this deeper sense of following my intuition, even though others around me were telling not to do it, even though, again, logically, it didn't make sense. Continuing to, I guess, go a non-linear path. I had a human design reading actually in the beginning of when I started doing the TBM workshops. And one of the biggest takeaways that I've garnered from that was this human design reader shared with me, I have a channel in my chart that basically, and again, this is like the permission that I didn't even know that I needed. I'm meant to live a very non-linear path, essentially. There's people around me in my life that are maybe doing something more traditional, but my path is not meant to be traditional. And I'm here to almost kind of, we could say inspire, for lack of a better term, people to maybe sometimes do break the mold. And that is so terrifying, again, because there are these moments that I've been met with in my life that don't feel logically right or going against the grain. But the more that I've been able to trust myself and defy those moments, especially when people are telling me don't do it or it might be wrong on paper, the deeper fulfilling, like the deeper fulfillment I've garnered, the more joy it's brought me, the more success. And back to that top value of freedom, the more freedom I've been able to experience. So that's just a little bit about the unfolding from that personal development journey.
I love it. And the authentic code is so in line with core values. Since I started as a life coach, almost 10 years ago, that's always been one of the first things that I will do with clients and walk clients through, even when I had programs that were teaching people how to build a business. So before we do anything business, we're going to do core values to keep referring back to as the top thing. And it's such a good guidance system. And I've turned down opportunities in this business because they've not been aligned with my authentic code or my core values. Yeah. And they look great on paper. And people would be like, what? Like, you turn down this collaboration or you turn down the chance to do that. And I'm like, yeah, but no, because it's just not there. Yeah. So if you're happy to share, I'd love to know your profile and type in human design.
Yes, I'm a manifesting generator with a 2-4 profile.
2-4 manifesting generator. So you've got that dance between I need to retreat because I'm a 2, and then I'm a 4, give me community and all the people.
Yes, absolutely. And I think being a manifesting generator too, my energy is pulled in so many different directions all the time. So it's been a ever evolving journey of understanding and deciding and choosing which directions feel right, and not shaming and guilting myself for wanting to do all the things and reading 5,000 books at one time and not finishing any of them and all of that.
The noise that always, like my manifesting generator clients, they say, oh, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this. And then it's like, ah. And that just kind of sums it up, because nothing ever really feels finished. And there's always a new idea popping up. And I think that in society that can be seen as a bad thing, because like, choose your path and stick to it. Like, as you were saying, you know, especially being from a traditional background, but then actually leaning into being a manifesting generator is like, no, have all the ideas, but just, you know, then use your authority to choose which ones are you going to actually go with.
Yes. That was also, I will say, from the TBM work, that was one of the most revelational takeaways too, is just, again, the permission I didn't know I needed, that it's actually okay to do all the things and not feel confined to, I just have to do one. Because that's when I think back now, especially seeing myself sitting at that desk at that architecture job, it was just because that was the only thing for me. And that was the only thing I thought I had to do, which now in hindsight, it's like, well, no wonder I felt so suffocated and unfulfilled, because I felt like this is it, where I'm so multifaceted. And again, I'm so grateful for my business, because now I'm able to do all the things that I want to do. So yeah, I think it's just the journey of continuing to find all those rabbit holes that feel in alignment for me, and continuing to give myself permission to go down those, but also be okay with stopping them when they don't feel right, and not shaming myself of, oh, I'm a quitter, or I never finished this. It's like, no, actually my energy is done here. So let's focus and direct somewhere else.
Love that. My energy is done here. That feels like such a clean end, and so kind of powerful of like, I'm done here. Me and my energy are moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. I might revisit you in the future, but if not, no hard feelings.
My energy is done here. I'm loving that one. Loving that. Any manifesting generators listening, that one's going to be gold for you. So thank you for sharing how obviously you made some big moves. You know, you walked away from a relationship, you walked away from a career, you did all of these things. The last thing that I really want to touch on, because I know this one is going to blow a lot of people's minds. What did you do to fund starting your business?
Yes, this is also a very scary moment in my career trajectory. So at the time, I had been with this agency that I mentioned for 2 years, and COVID had started. So this was 2020. This was the end of 2020. I was starting to reach that moment of unfulfillment again, of feeling constrained in my job. It was amazing. Again, I was learning so much, but again, that kind of monotony a little bit. I had started freelancing at the time, and there was a part of me that was being pulled, again, chasing more of that freedom. You know, when you're working for another person, and whatever it is, corporate or just for another person in general, you're confined, of course, to different parameters. And ultimately, I knew it's like, I need to be my own boss. But I didn't know what that looked like. I had started freelancing at the time, and so beautifully, I had gotten connected with someone who had ended up being my client, but became a bit of a mentor for me, who was nudging me and sharing with me, Ewelina, like, you should jump ship, like, leave this agency, do your own thing, you're good. But I wasn't ready. I was terrified. You know, I had this list of things I wanted to do. And again, I was following TBM. They tout, having an FU fund. So like, I need to save money. I need to have this amount of clients before I'm fully ready. And in the background, I was doing little things like starting my LLC, getting my business credit cards, but the universe quite literally pushed me off the cliff when I gave my bosses an ultimatum to take on freelancing a little bit more, expecting that they might either disagree or, allow me to do that, cut my hours. What I wasn't expecting, or I will say I was maybe 5% ready for this, of them fully letting me go. So that was a big shock to my nervous system. And at that point, I had only one client to my name. So I think my first contract with them was, they had paid me just $3,000 to do like one big branding project, but that was it. I didn't know where my work was coming from. And in tandem to that, the only savings that I had was my 401k. I only had $10,000 at that point. So nothing grand or extreme. And I just knew, I was like, I have to use this for my cushion just in case. So I completely withdrew my 401k savings. This was 1 year into COVID also. Like I had no idea. I'm like, the world could burn down and I'm leaving my, again, we can call it more safer 9 to 5. And I'm starting my own business with only one client to my name and my 401k savings. I have no freaking idea what's going to happen. But there is something so beautiful based on my experience. And since having started my business now, it's been 3 years and I've watched countless clients of mine do this where you take the leap and you are supported afterwards because something happened, after my 2-week notice and all that. And I finally kind of cut ties with my agency and I still had that one client to my name. All of these people just came out of the woodwork because people got word that I'm freelancing. And it's almost like, again, God, the universe, whatever, rewarded me. It's like that law of reciprocity. You do something scary, something maybe good in return happens back. And I feel like I truly was supported after I took that risk and leap of faith. The clients came, the work came, and I will say the last 3 years have been this gradual, beautiful unfolding of growth, but also tuning into those moments of risk, especially when it feels scary, because I think as business owners, but beyond entrepreneurship too, I think in life, you're going to be met with these decisions, again, going back to the logic versus intuition things that feel so scary, but trusting yourself, tuning into yourself to know this could be worth it. And I think if I hadn't given my bosses that ultimatum, or if they had let me go when I went back to another safer 9 to 5. Oh my goodness. I don't know where I'd be, but I'm just so grateful. I'm truly so grateful for having taken that risk and being shown truly that it's okay. Because now when scary decisions come up, it doesn't feel as scary anymore. It's like you're priming your nervous system the more you go into these situations that you're not going to die. Because I think fear comes up a lot, of course. And as humans, we think the worst case scenario is going to happen. Ultimately, what is that? I mean, that's death if we really distill it down, but I'm still here. Everything's okay. I've garnered a lot. And I think I'm more open and primed now to when those moments come up to approach them with more curiosity and tenacity, I think, because I've been shown they're worth it. So for anyone listening who's met with those moments of uncomfort and especially fear, because fear is an interesting one, but connecting to yourself and trusting yourself a bit to listen and think, what if I did take that chance? Where could I be? What could my life look like? And just know that more often than not, it's worth it. It really is.
I feel like there should be like a serious voiceover coming in now saying like, disclaimer, the Ambitious Introvert Podcast does not recommend that everyone withdraw their pensions. Do not all run out and withdraw your pensions. The point here that I was so keen to share is that people can look and go, oh, she did that. That's great. Oh, that's great for her. Like I couldn't do that because I feel nervous thinking about it, or I feel scared thinking about it. And that's clearly not the right decision for everyone. But when we're in those moments and we are faced with those big choices, when we look at other people that have taken them, like I walked away from a very high paying, successful job with a lot of benefits. And a lot of people said to me, it's a big risk. You won't earn as much in your own business as you do here. Mm-hmm. I have earned as much. And that wasn't what it was for. It wasn't like I'm going to go and do this to earn more. It was I'm going to go and do this because I'm going to feel fulfilled. And it's going to suit my values and my lifestyle. But everyone that's taken a big leap or, gone off the cliff, as we would say, feel scared while they're doing it, even though it's so easy to listen to them on a podcast and go, wow, that's great. There's still that fear is very, very real when we're actually taking action.
Yes, 1000%. And to what you shared about, yes, definitely. I think knowing yourself is really critical in these decisions because to your point, not everyone should be doing something that drastic, but I had been doing, I had set up, there were things behind the scenes that were going on. I had gotten my LLC, I was networking, granted, I only had that one client. What I didn't realize at that moment was I had formulated so many relationships already. All that needed to happen was I needed to just go full time so those connections can come back to me. So of course, go at your own pace, know yourself, connect with what it is that you're doing. And I got pushed, I got laid off, but one of the best quotes, and I share this with so many people, that my mentor had shared, is this person who was guiding me to freelance full time. He's like, Ewelina, he's like, there's never going to be a moment that, or rarely when people start their businesses or, take a scary risk, that they wake up and they're like, okay, today's going to be the day. Like, I'm ready. You just have to do it at some point. And so that was guiding me too, of like, there just has to come a time when you just have to do it, and not everything has to be perfect. The perfectionist in me always wants to make sure everything is in a nice little box. But God pushed me this time. And, as I shared, I was supported, and it was very worthwhile.
Thank you for being so open and honest, and such a joy to chat to. I know that anyone listening, wherever they are in their life, in their career, in their business and relationships, will have resonated with what you said and definitely got so much from it. But of course, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, please share with our audience one way that you own your energy so that you can reach your potential.
I love this question. The first thing that's coming to mind for me is, again, going back to my value of freedom. I love traveling. And so one thing that I have made a non-negotiable for me is taking solo trips. And these are opportunities for me to completely tune into myself, to sit with all that I'm navigating, and also be lit up and fulfilled in exploring a new place. And these don't have to be major. This could be a drive. I used to live in Boston. Back home, I'm in Connecticut at my parents' home currently. 2-hour drive into the city for a weekend, getting a hotel. That is the best way for me to recharge. Just 2 or 3 days on my own in a beautiful, inspiring city. Context is so important for me. So being around beautiful, environments or buildings, I would say that is what's on my heart for that one. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so relevant to my ambitious introverts who we can all benefit from more solo time. So yes. I love that. Thank you again for coming and chatting with me today, and all the best with your business.
Thank you so much, Emma. This was such a joy.
So much good stuff shared in that conversation with Ewelina. I really hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed chatting to her. Just a few things that I want to pick up from for you to take away. The first being that when Ewelina started talking about the To Be Magnetic or TBM work, I kind of had a sense that that's where she was going, but I wasn't sure. So I thought I'm just going to let her speak about it a little bit more and then maybe ask her what it is. But just from the way she described it, I had a feeling that she had been through that workshop and had been doing that kind of work. Now, if you've been here for a minute, you have definitely heard me rave about TBM. I talk about it in my newsletter quite a lot. So I'm going to pop the link in the show notes. And wherever you are really on your personal development, self-awareness, self-leadership, manifestation journey, all of those good things can really be strengthened by a practice like TBM. The great thing is it's super accessible and it's suitable, like I say, for people at every level. So I will pop the link below. Maybe you're curious now, you've heard about the impact that it's had on Ewelina's life, and obviously it's had a massive impact on mine too. Also, I love Ewelina's tip for owning her energy, being solo travel. I have had this conversation so many times over the years. Now, I adore solo travel. I've traveled for a month-long period on my own. I travel regularly on my own. I absolutely love it. However, I was a flight attendant from the age of 18, so it was very normal for me to go and travel and stay in a hotel on my own and maybe go out to dinner on my own because, I was the only crew member there. So I never really think about it. I know a lot of people find that so challenging. It can feel really uncomfortable, the thought of going out for dinner on their own. Like, what am I going to do? I've got no one to talk to. Where do I look? What are people going to think of me? It can bring up a lot of thoughts and feelings, even for introverts. But actually, even just taking yourself out for half a day or a day alone to spend some time in your own energy, in your own aura, can be huge. So I really love that she shared that tip. And I really encourage anyone that maybe feels some apprehension about that kind of thing, just think about where could you start? Could you even just start taking yourself out for lunch on your own and just carve out that time for you and really start to get comfortable with it? And the last thing that I really want to leave you with is this idea of, big, scary action. And taking these big leaps that can feel huge and daunting and scary. And it's very easy to look at someone else's story and think, well, it's okay for them. Look, that paid off. They're doing great. But, I can't do that because I feel fear. And as we touched on, fear is never the reason not to do it. Fear is the invitation to dive a little bit deeper into why you have those feelings. So if you are someone that's on the cusp of making a big decision, taking big action, doing something quite radical in your life, I hope this has reminded you that those emotions are really normal. Feeling scared is really normal. Having second thoughts is really normal, but none of those things are necessarily a reason not to do them and not to take action. That really comes down to your self-leadership and trust in yourself. Thank you once again for tuning into this episode. Have a wonderful week and talk to you again soon. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my Introverts Only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.